The story begins when all of humanity in a city called Inside City has a desire to be able to live forever or have a longer life. The government formed a technology research and development organization called SHIELD to realize that dream. A few years after the SHIELD organization was formed, they succeeded in developing a technology implant that can extend human life to 120 years. But behind the success of SHIELD technology, many things still need to be addressed, because not a few people turn into monsters. After all, their bodies reject SHIELD technology. People who fail to receive the SHIELD and turn into monsters are known as lost, and the SHIELD organization will be responsible for capturing these monsters. That night, the officers from the SHIELD organization went on patrol to catch the losts wandering in the middle of the city. They are also assigned to find the whereabouts of a young man named Hariki Masao, because he is the only person who managed to get out of the SHIELD system. The SHIELD troop consists of a male troop leader named Matsuji and a female operator named Yoshiko Haragi, who works under orders from the organization's leader named Shibuda. Every time the SHIELD troops managed to capture Loss, Yoshiko would take the Loss to the SHIELD headquarters for further investigation. Meanwhile, the outcasts living outside the city seem to dislike the existence of the SHIELD system, but the reason behind it is still unknown. Not long after, a young man named Takeuchi and Masao came to a bar run by a woman named Madame. Takeuchi intends to visit his best friend, Oba Yozo, because lately, Yozo has been isolating himself more often in his room. Yozo is a young artist who often spends his time painting various paintings. Unfortunately, even though he has a brilliant talent in the field of art, he still cannot change his fate and is not happy with his current life. Even Yozo often tried to end his own life repeatedly, but those attempts always failed because of the SHIELD system chip embedded in his body. That night, Takeuchi and Masao invited Yozo to join the operation to attack the SHIELD organization's headquarters in Inside City. Takeuchi did all that because he thought the government had alienated the people in Outside City since the SHIELD system was implemented. Before the operation, Masao gave a pill to Yozo and Takeuchi without telling them what it was for. That night, Takeuchi and his group started moving towards the city center where the SHIELD organization's headquarters were, while Masao and Yozo followed them from behind. Yoshiko and the other SHIELD officers had detected the presence of Takeuchi and his gang, so they immediately deployed many robots to block them. They also took strict action against members of the Takeuchi motorcycle gang who resisted. During the chaos, Matsuji gets orders from Shibuda to get rid of the Takeuchi motorcycle gang after Shibuda realizes that the group has the potential to become a Lost. Shibuda's suspicions turned out to be true. Takeuchi showed the usual early symptoms experienced by every Lost, and slowly he began to turn into Lost. At the same time, Yoshiko realized that Masao was behind the attack operation, and she believed that he might have caused Takeuchi to turn into a Lost. Actually, the medicine that was previously given by Masao is a medicine that can trigger a person to turn into a Lost. Masao did all that on purpose, because he wanted to find someone who could evolve into an applicant who was the perfect form of the SHIELD system program. Masao uses the power of an applicant to control the mind of the lost monster so that he can kill the elders who currently lead the Inside City, so that he creates a new world with himself as ruler. On the other hand, Shibuda realized that an applicant like Masao and Yoshiko could be useful for perfecting the SHIELD system. But Shibuda was afraid that the applicant would side with Masao and instead help Masao to control Inside City, so he chose to kill all the Losts even though they could potentially become an applicant. Back to the SHIELD officers trying to stop the Takeuchi motorcycle gang so they could not break into the SHIELD organization's headquarters. However, even though the SHIELD officers had defeated the rest of Takeuchi's motorcycle gang, they failed to prevent Takeuchi, who had blown up the SHIELD's headquarters gate first. Yozo, who saw the explosion, immediately rushed to Takeuchi to check his condition. Unfortunately, Takeuchi had completely turned into a Lost and began to lose his consciousness as a human. Takeuchi, who had become a Lost, began to lose control and attacked everyone near him, including Yozo, who was his own best friend. During the chaos, Yozo also turned into a Lost, forcing Matsuji and the SHIELD troops to kill them. But before Matsuji could kill Yozo, Yoshiko suddenly asked him to withstand the attack on Yozo. This was because Yoshiko could hear Yozo's thoughts and realized that he was an applicant just like herself and Masao. Masao, who witnessed the resurrection of the third applicant from a distance, also seemed satisfied because all the hard work he had done so far had paid off. The next day, Shibuda went to see the elders to report Yozo's appearance as the third applicant. He said they still didn't know who Yozo would side with this time. But based on Shibuda's observations, Yozo is likely to side with the SHIELD organization, which will help create a better human civilization. A few days later, when Yozo had regained consciousness, he found himself in the research room of SHIELD headquarters with Yoshiko. She then introduced herself to him and explained that he was the third applicant they had been waiting for. She also explains that the cause of Takeuchi and the others turning into a lost is due to the engineering of the system created by Masao, which deliberately did to create a mass lost phenomenon. Hearing this, Yozo suddenly remembered the pills that Masao had given before the attack operation. He also decided to join the SHIELD organization to fight Masao and avenge Takeuchi's death. But before that, Yozo asked Yoshiko for permission to allow him to return to his inn for some time. Although Yoshiko initially objected to the request because she was afraid that Masao would affect Yozo's mind, in the end, she agreed to the request. The next day, Yoshiko escorted Yozo to outside city with an escort from Matsuji and the other SHIELD troops. After arriving at the inn, Yozo was greeted by Madame and her daughter because they thought he had been killed in the raid operation the other day. It turned out that Yozo's purpose in coming back to outside city was to pay his last respects to Takeuchi by praying at the Takeuchi motorcycle gang headquarters. At the same time, Masao also came to Takeuchi's headquarters and pretended to pay his last respects to Takeuchi. Masao then takes Yozo to a secret lab where he develops the drugs he created to trigger the lost. Masao explains that he wants to destroy the current SHIELD system and build a better world for everyone. But Yozo couldn't believe Masao's words anymore. He felt very angry with Masao because he thought that Masao was the cause of Takeuchi's death. After seeing the flower Masao used to make the lost-inducing medicine, Yozo suddenly remembered that it was the same one Masao had previously given to Madame. Yozo immediately ran to the inn to warn Madame and her daughter about the flower. Unfortunately, when Yozo arrived at the inn, Madame's daughter had already turned into a lost who attacked Madame until she died. The incident almost made Yozo lose control and turn into the form of an applicant. But before that happened, Yoshiko tried to calm him and began to tell him about a similar incident she had experienced. Several years ago, her father suddenly lost control and almost killed Yoshiko, but she managed to survive because her father chose to end his own life after some of his consciousness returned. The story made Yozo reminisce about past memories that he had long forgotten. It turns out that Yozo experienced the same thing as Yoshiko experienced. In the past, both of Yozo's parents died because his father suddenly turned into a lost, and Yozo is the one who killed his own father. After remembering the incident, Yozo became increasingly panicked and kept blaming himself for what had happened to his father. Yoshiko hugged and tried to calm him because their lives must go on, even though past events hurt them a lot. Shortly after, Masao suddenly appears, instigating Yozo to side with him. However, because Yozo refused, Masao immediately used his applicant power to control his mind so that Yozo could not attack him. Masao even forced Yozo to remove his own heart so that he could take Yozo's heart and ordered Yozo to kill Yoshiko. Fortunately, before Yozo could hurt Yoshiko, she restored his consciousness. Although at the same time, Masao had already fled from that place with Yozo's heart. After the incident, Yoshiko and the team from the SHIELD organization tried to save Yozo by installing an artificial heart in his body. However, until now, no development has indicated that he will return to life. In addition to monitoring Yozo's progress, Yoshiko and Matsuji also have to get ready to face the threat of attack from Masao on the day of the celebration of the success of the SHIELD system, which will be held tomorrow. On the other hand, Shibuda went back to the Elder to discuss the alternative plan they had previously planned. Although it is not known exactly what the plan means, Shibuda seems to object and wants to reject the implementation of the plan. However, he couldn't refuse the orders from the elders, so he had no choice but to obey the requests from the elders. The day before the celebration of the SHIELD system, Yoshiko was desperate to enter Yozo's subconscious mind with her applicant power, even though it was very risky to make her soul trapped in Yozo's mind. But before Yoshiko slipped into Yozo's mind, Shibuda asked her to cancel the process because he would carry out an alternative plan for Yoshiko's body. The alternative plan that Shibuda meant was to transfer organs and the SHIELD system from Yozo's body to the bodies of higher-ups or the elders so that higher-ups could live longer lives than other humans. Yoshiko felt excruciating pain in her heart after knowing that and wanted to fight it. Shortly after that, Yozo suddenly woke up and saw Yoshiko, who was in his subconscious. Surprisingly, she actually looked sad while telling him that moment was their last meeting. Yoshiko's reaction then confused Yozo, but he still granted her last request, which she wanted to paint in his mind. After Yozo finished his painting, Yoshiko immediately said goodbye to him and got out of his mind. A few hours later, Yozo finally woke up from the coma and rushed to ask Matsuji about Yoshiko's whereabouts. Matsuji couldn't answer either, because he didn't know about Yoshiko's whereabouts until now. Matsuji then went to see Shibuda to inquire about Yoshiko's whereabouts, but the answer Shibuda gave really took him by surprise. It turns out that Yoshiko has volunteered to replace Yozo in the shield system transplant plan for the higher-ups. Matsuji couldn't hold back his anger after hearing that and hit Shibuda, so he realized his mistake. Matsuji could not believe that Shibuda would sacrifice Yoshiko to fulfill the greed of the higher-ups or the elders. On the other hand, Masao enters Yozo's mind and says that all this chaos happened because Yozo didn't want to side with him. Masao said all that after he managed to create a mass lost phenomenon in the middle of the city and create terror in various places. After Masao left Yozo's mind, Matsuji invited Yozo to a secret operation room. When Yozo saw Yoshiko, who was already in a lifeless state, he couldn't help but freeze as if he was powerless to do anything else. He was devastated after learning that she had sacrificed herself to protect him from the greed of the higher-ups. Meanwhile, Masao continues to create hundreds of lost monsters and control them all so that he can destroy the entire city. Matsuji invites Yozo to fight against Masao together so that all the sacrifices made by Yoshiko do not end in vain. Hearing that, Yozo remembered how much trust Yoshiko had in the success of the shield system that could create world peace. He also activated the shield's power and turned it into a perfect fire application form. Yozo went to where the higher-ups were because he knew Masao was currently targeting the higher-ups. After arriving at the destination, a high-ranking officer seemed happy because he thought Yozo would save him from Masao's attack. But Yozo's purpose in coming to the higher-ups wasn't just to defeat Masao. He secretly controls the remnants of Yoshiko's shield system in the bodies of the higher-ups so that Yoshiko kills those greedy higher-ups. In the end, the higher-ups died and turned into Lost with Yoshiko's form and consciousness. Unfortunately, when the Lost of Yoshiko's soul wants to attack Masao, he immediately uses his applicant power to control her and fight back against Yozo. As a result, the battle between Yozo and all the lost monsters from Yoshiko's soul was unavoidable. In that fight, Yozo didn't attack Yoshiko because he felt that the lost monsters were still a part of her. But after a while, he realized that Yoshiko's dreams and hopes would be destroyed if he died in this battle. With all that in mind, Yozo regained his strength and used that power against Masao. After successfully killing Masao and destroying all the lost in the city, the great chaos in Inside City was finally resolved. After the big incident, Yozo finally decided to join the SHIELD organization fully and devote his life to making Yoshiko's dream come true. Thank you for watching our content. We hope you like it and subscribe our channel. See you on the next video. Bye.